In this video, I'll walk you through Monday.com step by step, from setting up your account, mastering the fundamental tools, to choosing the right pricing plan for your team. This is a complete and detailed tutorial designed for beginners, so by the end, you'll know exactly how to structure your workspace, manage projects, and get the most out of Monday.com. Alright, first thing you want to do is that you want to check out the links in the description and go into the website of Monday.com. Once you're here, is that you can now click on Get Started, and then you can now set up your account from there, or if you already have one, you can click here and log in. In my case, I don't have one, so I'm going to click here on Get Started, and then I can either go for my Google account or provide my email address and undergo the process. If you would want it to be much simpler, just go with your Google account right here. And now once you're signed in, you will now be prompted into this page wherein it would give you some introductory questions to understand you better, your team better, or your company, so that it would be able to tailor according to your preferences or needs. So in here, I'm just going to choose work. And this question right here, I'm going to go for a team leader and click on continue. And from here, how many people are on your team? So I'm going to go for 2 to 5 and then 1 to 19. And then select what you'd like to manage first. So you can go for specific things right here. It would actually be depending on the your company, your position, and everything. So these are all personal questions. So you can just answer them right here without any special guidance. Just read the question correctly. Right there. And we are now done. And after that, we will now be prompted into the next process, wherein we will now be customizing or tailoring our team, our board, and our workspace here in Monday.com. So in here, you can add your team members right here. So you can add their email, and then you could now go for the permission or their roles right here. They can be an admin or a member. And if you need more, you can always click here and add another so that you'd be able to have as many as possible here and add everyone on your team. And I'm just going to click here on Remind Me Later because this is just a sample team. And from here, we can now name our first project. Let's say tutorials. And click on Next. And from here, you can now go for the relevant columns for your board. So in my case, that would be the owner, status, due date. I think that would be relevant for making tutorials. And then the files. And I think I'm going to go for last updated. Just like that. And click on Next. And from here, we can now get real-time insights with dashboard. You could also customize the dashboard. In my case, I'll just select everything in here and click on Next. And from here, you can now add a view layout. So what view would you like to have first? And if you don't like it right here, then don't worry, we can just add more later on. It's just asking you to add your first view. So in my case, I like table view because it is much simpler, especially when managing videos right here, because I could see everything right here really clearly, and it is efficiently organized compared to others. But you could also go for others if that's what you are comfortable with. In my case, I just go for table. Click on Next. And from here, we can now list our project with its tasks. So first is a task 1. Let's say I'm going to go for Monday.com video. And then I'm going to go for next one is Gamma video. And task 3 would be Chat GPT video. Right there. And click on Get Started. And then we will now be prompted in here into our workspace. And now in here, the first thing that we're going to discuss would be the organizational hierarchy, because that is a fundamental knowledge that you absolutely must have as a beginner so that you would know how everything is organized here, even if you have different views that you have here on your workspace. So first of all, on top of the organizational hierarchy would be the workspaces, which you could access by going here into the left menu, and then you can see your workspace in here. You could click here on the drop down, and then you'd be able to see all the workspaces. And if you have so much, you could always search for a workspace in here to find it easier. And if you would want to add a workspace, you can click here on Add a Workspace, or you could click here on the plus button. You could also click here on Browse All if you would want to filter it out, and you'd have a more comprehensive view of searching for your workspace or selecting them. In my case, let's just go click here on Add Workspace right here. Let's try it out. So from here, we can now add a workspace name, change our photo, and then the privacy. So let's say sample tutorial workspace. Could always change the photo right here if you'd want. Click on add workspace, and then it will now be added in here. As you can see, this is empty. We can add a view right here by clicking here, and then we can now click here on project, portfolio, board, doc, and many more right here. So yeah, let's just go back into the main workspace, as this is what I'll be using for this tutorial. And basically, you could also edit the details here in your workspace by navigating here and selecting the workspace, for example, this one or this one. And then you'll be prompted in here, right? So in here, you will now be able to change the profile picture. You can change the name right here. Let's say I'm going to go for tutorial videos right there. And then we can now click here, and then we can also change the color and then the icon right here if you would want. You could also upload your own logo by clicking here, and it will now scan your storage just like that. So just select the photo that you'd want to upload. And then you could also add a description. So this is where we make tutorials, something like that. And then next is that we have the recent. So you'd be able to see the views in here. And then you could also see the things that was done, some activities right here in the recent. So this is where you can view that. So if you'd want to see an overview of the activities or the recently done things or tasks right here, then you can see that here in the recents. Next is the content. So you'd be able to see all the contents here in your workspace. We don't have much yet because we haven't started anything on our views. We only have this. Next is that we have permission, but this is only on the upgraded plan. Since we are only in the free plan, we wouldn't be able to access this. But yeah, you'd be able to do that once you are on the upgraded plan, which I think you would need if you would want to use Monday.com for serious work. Next is that we have the members right here. You can click on that, and then from here, you can see the members of work management, and then you can click here on manage users, and then you'll now be prompted in here into the back end or the settings right here in Monday.com. You can see the users here for your workspace. You could always search for the username or email right here. You could also invite a new team member by adding their email and then writing a message if you want, and then selecting their permission or their role. And yeah, that is basically it right here. And then you'd be able to manage your team members in here. You could go for the user role, and as you can see, you cannot change your own role because this is me, so I wouldn't be able to change that. And we have some invitations, departments, board ownership, and many more right here. Let's go back and let's go into our workspace again. So in here, we also have this one right here. By clicking here on the three dots, we could rename the workspace, change workspace type, leave workspace, delete workspace right here. So if you'd want to do any of this, this is where you'd be able to access it. And when you go here into the content, notice that we have the cleanup mode. So this basically uses AI right here to clean up your workspace so that there will be less junk and less distractions in here in your workspace. This is very useful as this is where we would be able to manage everything in one dashboard, saving time and keeping your workspace clean instead of going to open each board and archive things manually that is not needed anymore. So by enabling cleanup mode, you'd be able to see all the clutters that you can dispose in here. So that's it here for the workspace right here on what you could do here in your workspace. And now you know how you could edit the details, add a workspace, and even delete it. Next is that we're gonna go down to the organizational hierarchy. So below the workspaces would be the folders. So you could access that by clicking here on the plus button and clicking on folder. And from here, we would now have a folder. So let's say tutorial stuffs right there. Press enter, and then we now have it right here. So basically here in this folder is that you can drag views into it. So the purpose of this is in organizing your views in a workspace or everything around here so that it will now be organized inside your workspace. For example, I'm gonna go for tutorials. And now we have our tutorials under the folder that we need tutorial stuffs. So that's it. We will now be able to organize that, and then we can now hide and unhide it. As you can see, it's a very convenient and it's looking really clean. And in here, we can click here on the three dots here for our folder. We can now rename. We can change the color if we'd want, as you can see right there. And then we could also move this to another folder. We can move it to another workspace or move the template, however you'd want it. And then you could also create in folder a new board, doc, dashboard form, or folder, whatever it is. So we're going to be discussing this later on. And then you could also collapse all folders right here on this list. And we have the delete one if you don't want to delete this folder. And yeah, that is basically it for the folders. And now below that is that you can click here on plus, and then you have these things right here. So these are below the folders because you could put this inside the folder. And notice that we also have a project and portfolio in here. So basically a project in here is basically just like a board. So this is the core working space where tasks live, and the portfolio in here is basically just an overview of multiple boards or multiple projects so that you could see all of your task or your project's details in a bird's eye view. So that's the purpose here of project and portfolio. But in my case, I wouldn't be able to access them because as you can see, they are only in the upgraded plan with the diamond icon right here. So when I click on that, as you can see, it needs the pro plan. But essentially, that would be the feature or the purpose of project and portfolio. Next is that we're going to navigate in here. So we could go for another board, can go for a document right here, and then we can name that document, let's say sample, no, I think I'm going to go for tutorial notes. And the privacy in here, you can make it private, shareable, or main. So depending on how you'd want it. In my case, I'll just go for main, click on create doc, and then we will now have it right here. And then we can now drag it here inside a folder. And then we'd now be able to make that under the folder right here. And we could also click here on the three dots. And then from here, we could now click here and create a folder, which is essentially same thing with here, so that you don't have to drag stuff anymore. So we could also go for a form. And now it's creating a new form. And here it is right here. So we can now again customize this easily right here. And now next is that we could also create a subfolder. So that would be a folder inside a folder. Click here, and then we would now have it right here. As you can see, this folder is now inside this folder. When I go and expand this, we will now be able to see it right here. So yeah, that is the thing that is below the folders organizational hierarchy. And now I'm just going to go and quickly discuss on what each one is. So here in the docs is where you'd be able to write some text down. So this is commonly used as a notepad. And in here, you have your formatting tools at the top. So you could also use that. You can change the title in here. Go for the creator. And you can see the details when it's created and less updated. And in here, you can now start typing your text. Or you could also start with AI if needed. Or you could go for a template right here. Let's say meeting notes. Click on use template. And then we would now have this template in here, as you can see. And yeah, you could also attach the board in here if you'd want. So you could go here into the blank space and type in slash right here. And then you would now be able to type in board. And then you will now be able to include a board right here. So let me do it again right there, board. And then you can now click here on board or mention boards. Let's say board right here. And then you can now select the board. Let's say tutorials. And then it is now included, as you can see. And then we can go for another one. Let's say I'm going to go for a slash. And then we would now have this menu wherein we would now be able to add some stuff in here in this doc. So this is very useful to format your docs and have everything you need included right here. So yeah, you can just feel free to explore everything right here and insert what you need. And you also have their shortcuts in here on what you need to type to immediately go or select that feature. And next is that we have this one right here. So you can click here on share if you would want to change the privacy of this document. And then this is also where you could copy the link so that you'd be able to share it with your team members and so on. You could even present it. You could go for the comments right here on your thoughts about this docs. This is where you'd be able to chat with your team members and so on. And you could also manage the members for this doc options. You have a bunch of other settings right here that you'd be able to use. Next up is that we have the form. So we can go here into our form that we have just created. We can now rename it right here. Let's say tutorial forms right here. And then we can now go add a description if needed. And in the board info, we could go for private or shareable for the board type, and then the owner and so on right here. So now let's go here into AI and tell it about the form that we would want to create. So in my case is that I need a client intake for my how-to tutorial video projects. Something like that. It could be something generic as this. You could also be more specific, like you have already some questions that you have in mind to be included into your form. You could definitely include that right here. In my case, it's just something generic, so AI would be the one that to put in relevant questions on the forms. So now I'm going to click here on generate preview. And now once it's done creating, you will now have your form right here. So you can see client intake form for how to tutorial video projects, client name, email address, phone number, project description, and many more in here. So once you're satisfied with this, is that you can now click here on create form. And then you will now be able to confirm that this is the form that you would want. And then you will now be having it right here. As you can see, I now have it right here. So I can now put in the details right here, and then you can click here on edit form and click on next, and then now we can change the title and we can change the details right here. So basically what the AI did for us is to provide us a guide on how we'll be able to do this. So in this way, I won't have to start from scratch, and it will now be less work as I only need to edit a couple of things. Like for example, here is the title. So I just want this to be how to tutorial videos clients, something like that, or just client. And then you could also change the description, and then you could also go for the fields right here. So this is a text field, or it is a client name. So it is like this. You could click here on the question settings so that you'd be able to go for hide question. You can make it required, pre-fill value. If you'd want that, you can enable this, and then you'd now be able to select the source and the field. In my case, I'll just disable that. And next is that we have the logic. And this is where you'd be able to set rules that certain questions only appear if the submitter answers a previous question in a specific way. So you can select a question right here and so on. So yeah, that's the purpose of logic if you'd want that. And then you could also copy or duplicate the question or delete this question. You can also click here on plus button to add a field right here. And this is where you can add a field or a question via short text, single text, file, phone, and many more right here, depending on what you want. So yeah, you can just go to the other fields right here or other questions, and then you can customize them as you like. And even in the button right here, you can change the text. So let's say submit, click here to proceed, something like that. Let's say finish right here instead, because I would want my button to be concise. And then we have the thank you page. You could also customize this if you want. So you could go for the text right here, description, and then you could also show an image if you'd want to. And then this is how it would look like. So yeah, this is basically it on the forms right here on how you could create one. So now I'm going to click here on back to view. And here we have it. It is now saved. So that's how you can create your form. Now next, let's click here on share form. And this is where we'd now be able to disperse this form to be answered by our participants. In here, we have the settings. We can shorten the URL if that's what you want. And now we can just click here and copy link again. We could also put in password, require login to monday.com, or form access right here. You could also deactivate if needed. Now let's go into the form. So here we are, and from here, or I'm just gonna go and answer this with some sample details, just so that we could see later on when we receive the answers or data from this form. I am now done filling up, so I'm gonna click here on finish, and it will now be submitted. As you can see, we are now in the thank you page. Now I'm gonna go back in here, and now I'm gonna go here into Workfirm's submission viewer. And this is where we'd be able to see all the submissions that was made in our form. So as you can see, this is the one that I have made just now. So you will now be able to see the client name and other details right here. And then you could also export this. You could click here. You could save this as a PDF, as an image, however you'd want. Click here on the three dots, wherein you could now show this item in the board, submit feedback, help article, and you could also click here on new item. And then you would now be able to input another submission right here, just for this one right here, without having to go into your form. So you can click here on create item. As you can see right here, we now have this one, but this is the only one because we haven't filled up the other fields. So yeah, and then we also have the filter board by person if you would want that. And that is basically it for the Workfirm submissions. Essentially, this is where you'd be able to view the forms that was submitted to you. And here in the main table is where we would now be able to see the answers. So basically just a table view of the Workfirm submissions right here, instead of having the full form view right here. So in here, it is much easier to analyze everything because it is much more organized and concise. So we have the item, specific requirements, target audience, budget, client name, and many more. So notice that these are all the questions that we have on our form, right? And then we have the answers right here to that certain question in the form. So we could see that right here. And then we could go here, scroll sideways, and then we'll be able to see everything. And we could also add a new item, just like what we did here in the Workfirm submissions. So it's basically just a different view. And if you want more views, is that you could just click here on the add view. And then basically you could also go for a table view, which is essentially this one. You could go for a chart view, for example, and then you'll now be able to see your answers in a chart, as you can see right here. And then you could also add a widget for this chart. You can go for numbers, batteries, and so on. So yeah, that is basically it for this one right here. And then we also have the Kanban board. Let's see on what it looks like. So when we go here into Kanban, as you can see, we now have this answer right here. So that's basically on how you would be able to do this here on Forms. And now, next is that let's discuss the board that we just created earlier. So we are now done with the forms, docs, and now we're here in the board. In here is where you'd be able to see all the tasks here in your project. And then you'd be able to see the groups. These are the groups, and these are the tasks inside the groups. And then here, you can click on new task right here if you'd want that. So as you can see, there is now a new task right here, which I can edit and add some details. But for me, I'll just go and delete this for now. Right click and delete right there. And I could also create a new group right here if needed. So in my case, I don't really need the to do, completed, or in progress because I already have the status column right here. Instead, I'm just going to go for my team members right here on the topics that they would need to do. Let's say I'm going to go for Kyle. And this one right here would be for Francis. And add a new group. So I'm gonna go and let's say this would be for Yuki right there. And then here it is. Now I could also change the color in here for this board right here so that it would now be a different color with some color organization right there. I think satisfied with that. And next is that you could also drag this task right here. So you could go and drag this into this one. And as you can see, just as easy as that, it's now transferred. And also same goes for this one. So I'm going to go put one video each person or member right here. And in here, what you could do here with the task is that you could click here on the box, or you could check box right there, and then you could now have these tools right here at the bottom. So you could duplicate, export, archive, delete, move to, or you could use the sidekick or the AI right here. And you could also integrate with apps. So this is for bulk processing right here. So you could select multiple tasks right here and do the feature in one go. And next is that you could also click here on the expand this item, and then you'd now be able to see all the sub items inside it. So far in our organizational hierarchy is that we have the workspace, and then under that we have the folders. And under that is that we have the workspace items right here, which is the forms, notes, and then the board. And then there's another one, which is dashboard. So we could also do this right here and then just put it right here. So that would be the dashboard. And we'll be discussing that later on. And in here, inside the board, is that we also have the groups below it. And then below the groups is that we have the task, or what we call also item. And then below that item is that we have the sub item or the subtask, as you may call it. Now, before we dive into the subtask, let's first finish discussing the task section right here. So in here, we have the AI icon, which we can click, and then we will now be prompted in here. So basically, the AI here can create new items for you, update column values, add updates or comments, change item status or assignment, and organize into groups. And yeah, basically you can just the AI to do that thing, and then it would do it right here on the specific item or task that you have chosen or click the AI icon on. And next is that we have this one right here. So basically these are comments. So you can click here on write a new update. So let's say recording is stuck because there is no free trial. Let's say something like that. Just for an example, okay? But here in the monday.com, we do have a free trial. And click on update, and then we would now have it right here. And then you'd be able to see that there is now a number 1. So there is one comment right here. And then you could also mention your teammates right here by using the @ symbol right here, @ and then everyone on this board or specific people, depending on how you'd want it. You could also use this formatting tools and formatting this text. You can add a GIF, mention, add a file, emojis, and use AI writing tools again. Click on update, or you could click here, and then you could also schedule it if you want. And there it is, and now it's number 2. Next is that we have this. So this is where you'd be able to assign the members here on the specific task. So in my case, I'll just assign myself in here. And then next is the status. So this is where you can change the status so that you'd be able to let everyone know on what the status is in here. So let's say it is now done. And then the due date right here, you can now change this if it's not done yet. You can change that if needed. And then the files is where you'd be able to upload a file in here. So it could be a thumbnail that you would want to upload in here. Or you could also go for the add a column. And if you'd want to upload a Google Drive link, you can click here on link. If it's too heavy and can't be uploaded right here, you could just go for a link here instead. And then we have the last updated so that I would know when I did my last edits here on this task. And you could also drag this columns here, by the way, if you would want to rearrange them. So I'm gonna go and drag this right here. So I want it just like that. And this one, I'm gonna rename this. Let's say I'm gonna go for thumbnails. Thumbnail. And then this one would be for the video. So on this task, I can now upload the thumbnail and the video right here, and it will also be updated on the other groups. So yeah, that is basically it. You could add more column if you'd want, so you can select your columns in here. And basically, you can do the same thing with the other items or task. Now let's go into subtask. Now let's expand this task so that we can see the sub item or subtask. Let's click here and add a sub item. Let's say I'm gonna go for the features right here. So I discussed the features in monday.com. And from here, I can click here on open sub item page. And now I can go for the updates in here. So let's say it is completed right here. Click on update. And then you could also go here for files. You could upload files, activity log, and then you could add more views right here if needed. And then here again, you can change the assignee for this sub item or subtask if needed, and then the status, the date, and basically could add another column again if you'd want to. So yeah, essentially the same thing with the main task in here. It's just that this is used for a specific purpose, which is the milestones in order for you to achieve the bigger goal, which is the task right here. So you could think of it like that. So yeah, that's the basics here on how you'd be able to use this boards feature right here on Monday. And our last workspace item would be the dashboard, as we have talked about. So this is the high-level reporting and visualization space. So instead of looking at one board at a time, you can go here and connect multiple boards and display their data in one place. This is not where you do the work because that's the board's job. It's just where you monitor, analyze, and communicate progress. You'd be able to click here to see the connected boards. You could connect more if you have more boards. And you could also add a widget so that you would be able to display what kind of data you would want to be displayed in here in the dashboard. You can go for numbers, and then you will now see it right here at the very bottom, wherein you can now set up this widget. So you can also click individually on these widgets, and then you will be able to see the data that you would be able to optimize. Like here in the settings right here of this chart, I could now go here for the settings of that. I can change the chart type, x-axis, and many more options. So yeah, this is basically it for the dashboard. It's that simple. Alright, so far we have now understood the organizational hierarchy. We now know what each one is, how to access them, and how to use them. Same goes for the workspace items. Next thing is that one another vital information that you must know here in Monday is that you can integrate other platforms to sync your data. So basically, you can click here on the puzzle icon here on the top right, wherein you would now be able to connect it into your Monday account with this apps right here, depending on what you need. So it would be subjective on what your niche is or what your team needs. But basically, this is where you can explore the apps so that you'd be able to sync data or get more features here into Monday.com by using these apps. Another thing is that you could also go here into your boards or here in your forms and look for the integrate button. And in here, you could also connect the apps right here to sync your data here in your forms or in your board. As you can see, it says forms right here. So I could connect an platform or an app right here so that I would be able to supercharge my workspace with these apps. So yeah, this is one of the great ways here to expand the features or the power of your workspace here in Monday. So that's a very powerful feature. Another thing is that you can access the homepage in here on the left menu at the very top. And in here, you'd be able to see your most recently visited boards or workspace items. You have your inbox right here, so you'd be able to see all the messages or comments that you are mentioned or that was meant for you. And then you have your workspaces in here. So it's simple. This is the homepage. And then here in My Work is where you'd be able to keep track of all of your responsibilities, like in the past dates, today, this week, next week, depending on when the deadline is. So all that you're seeing here is or are items that you are part with or responsible of. And then you could also go here into calendar view if you would want to see the calendar and see on what date or how many tasks you have for that date and so on. So yeah, this is basically very useful for you to look at every day so that you would know what kind of work or which work to prioritize. And now one last thing that I want to talk about would be the automation here in Monday, because I think that would be a very powerful tool. Even if you're a beginner, you'll still be able to understand it. So it's simple. Basically go here into your workspace items that has the automate button right here. Click on that. And then from here, you'd now be able to create your automation from scratch, or you could go with a template in here if there is a template that is exactly what you would want to create. And from there, you can just modify the settings with your details that you would want for your automation. In this example, I'm just going to start from scratch so I could demonstrate everything. So in here, you can now see when this happens. So this is the condition that would need to be fulfilled in order for this automation to be triggered. So here, you can now search. You can go for when status changes to something, item created, and many more right here. Let's say that I'm going to go for when an item is created. Right here for this board, I'm going to go for notify right here. So when an item is created, then notify. This would now pop up, allowing us to edit the message. So let's say I'm just going to go with something simple. So the notification message would be the item created right here. And then I'm just going to go for the item name right here. So whenever there is a message or notification, this will be the message right here. So item created, and it will now include a task name. You could also go for other fields if you'd want. Click on done. And then next is who to notify. You can go for yourself, team member, or others right here, depending on who you'd want to be notified. So in my case, it's just me. Click on create notification. And then it will now be created here on this board. As you can see, it's in automation tutorials. So you should now see that right here under manage. And now I'm going to create an item in here, and let's see if we get notified. So let's say sample item. And now enter. And now it has been created. And we're gonna go into here. As you can see, an automation sent a notification about an item. So we now be able to see that it is the sample item right here. So this is the notification that we have. Next is that we have the Autopilot Hub. So this is basically the central command center for all automations and integrations across your Monday.com account. And instead of checking each board's automation settings one by one, this hub gives you a single place to see how everything is running. And from here, you can choose the board. Let's say tutorials in here. And as you can see, all minor automations are running smoothly. And then we could go for the usage, and then we should now be able to see the action usage right here, which was earlier we had a notification, so it consumed one of the actions used. In my case, I'm only the free plan, so I only have a limit of 25,000, and we have active automations right here and so on. So yeah, this is your dashboard for your automation or central command center. And now one last thing is that let's go here into our profile icon on the top right and go into the upgrade button. In here, we will now be talking about the pricing plans on which one you should get. So in here, you want to notice that we have to choose team size. So you want to choose the number of seats that you would want to get for your team. And then I suggest going for the yearly plan, as this would get you an 80% base discount. You could also go for a monthly if you'd want to, but it will have a higher price per month, as you can see on this prompt. And yeah, I suggest going for yearly. So I'm just going to go for yearly right here. And then we now have the plans. So first up is the basic plan. So this is basically the entry-level paid plan. Gives you unlimited boards and items with simple project tracking in one place. It also adds basic storage and support compared to the free plan. This is for small teams or individuals who just need a central hub to organize tasks and projects. It is best if you don't need advanced views, automations, or integrations just yet. Next is that we have the standard plan. So this adds collaborations and workflow tools like timeline, Gantt, calendar views, plus automations and integrations, but with monthly limits. It also allows guest access for external collaborators and dashboards that can combine data from multiple boards. So this is for teams that need to coordinate across projects and want automation to reduce manual work, which is great for agencies, student groups, or mid-sized teams managing multiple projects at one place. Next is that we have the Pro plan. So this unlocks advanced workflow features like private boards, chart views, time tracking, formula columns, and much higher automation and integration limits, designed for handling complex projects at a scale. So this is now for larger teams or businesses that need detailed reporting, resource tracking, and advanced customization, which is perfect if you are managing multiple departments or client projects with lots of moving parts. And lastly, we have Enterprise Plan. So this is the top tier with enterprise grade security, compliance, and admin controls. It includes SSO, SEIM provisioning, advanced reporting, audit logs, and premium support. So you would need to contact Monday for this one. And the pricing is custom, so yeah, it requires contacting them. This is a large organization that needs scalability, strict security, and centralized admin oversight, which is ideal for corporations, university, or government teams. You could also go here into business and enterprise, but basically the same thing in here. We have the pro and enterprise plan. And basically, as an overview, the basic plan here is for simple project tracking for small teams. The standard plan is for adding collaboration, automations, and integration, which is the best all-rounder. And the pro plan would be the advanced workflows, reportings, and scalings for complex projects. And enterprise would be for security, compliance, and admin power for large organizations. So by now, you should have an idea on which plan you should get. If you're planning to get one, make sure to check the links in the description. If there are any deals out there, there might be bonuses, coupon codes that you could use to get a discount. So that's it. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.